Emma Walker's story is one of the most memorable crime cases I have ever researched. Emma Jane Walker, an incredibly gorgeous girl, was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, on March 20 of 2000. Her parents, Mark and Jill Walker, and also had a brother named Devin. Emma was described as being very sweet, as well as very down-to-earth. She was known for being an extremely kind and friendly person that people just loved. People who didn't know her assumed she was the stereotypical pretty cheerleader, but they would meet her. She was the nicest person they had ever met. People of her town, plus her family, had nothing but positive things to say about her. Emma's dream in life was to be a neonatal nurse, which includes working with infants in intensive care or premature babies. In addition, she did quite a bit of volunteer work, and she regularly volunteered at an animal shelter. Not only did she do all these amazing things, but she was also really into competitive dance and cheerleading. When Emma Walker entered Central High School as a freshman in 2014, she tried out for their cheerleading team. She was the only freshman to make the team. Her cheerleading and high school career were both very successful for her. She had quite a few different friends and was an honor student. During her freshman year, Emma met a boy named Riley. Riley Gall was 2 years older than her, and he was a star wide receiver on the football team. Riley was actually very active in his church, and he was known to be a great student, overall just the typical boy next door. His friends described him as someone who was somewhat of a nerd as he was growing up. He was really into Star Wars, and then as he got older in high school, he became very involved with football. Emma eventually developed a crush on Riley, but Riley was involved with another girl at the time. Riley, however, didn't think long before deciding to break up with the other girl for Emma. They hit it off right away, especially because there's something like that storybook romance out of the high school world. He was the football boy, and she was the cheerleader. One thing that stood out at the very beginning of this relationship is that even though Riley broke up with his ex-girlfriend, he promised her that he would still take her to the prom. Even though he was already dating Emma, he took his ex to the prom instead of Emma, his junior year. This actually made Emma's parents really concerned that he wasn't prioritizing her, and they feared that he would hurt her. The thing here that she was very stubborn and liked to make her own decisions, so they expressed their concern. She, therefore, did not pay much attention to their concerns. When it came to Riley, there was some tension in the family regarding this subject. The perfect couple didn't last too long, as they started breaking up, on and off, all the time. His friends started expressing concern that Riley never really seemed interested in getting to know them or hanging out with them. He didn't really want much to do with her friends, and he also wanted her to have less time with her friends. Riley started becoming very possessive of her, and then it got to the point where he would get mad at her if she were wearing certain things. He attempted to control how she was dressed when she was at work. He would go to her job and hang out there for hours, simply waiting for her to get off. Whenever she did go out with her friends, without him, he would be obsessively calling and texting her. There was no trust at all, and he always wanted to know where she was and what she was doing at all times. Clearly, that's very unhealthy in any relationship, especially in a high school relationship. Eventually, Riley started sending pretty aggressive messages to her, typically on Snapchat. The couple then got into a typical abusive relationship cycle, as some call it. As any other parent would, both of her parents really wanted her to end the relationship, especially since it was unhealthy. To encourage her to end it completely, they banned him from coming to their house, and they also took away Emma's phone, so they could try to control her communication with him. As Riley gave her an iPod Touch, he was still able to communicate with her, just without her parents knowing. Eventually, after dating on and off for 2 years, Riley ended up graduating high school. He attended Maryville College, and that was about half an hour away from Emma, so her parents were happy that there was some separation present in the situation. However, Emma and Riley decided that they would continue dating, even after he left for school. At this point, Emma's parents felt like there was absolutely no point in this, and they banned her from talking to him at all. However, they still found ways to sneak around her parents and still communicated. Finally, her parents became so desperate for them to break up. They banned her from leaving the house for any reason, unless it was school or cheerleading practice. After a while, her parents noticed that their plan was starting to work out, and Emma was beginning to act like her old self again. They said that at this time, she seemed much happier. Despite their best efforts, things eventually started taking a turn for the worse. Right before Thanksgiving break in 2016, Emma ended up seeing Snapchats of Riley with other girls on his college campus, which really made her upset. This time, Emma decided to finish things with Riley for good. She decided that she deserved better than that, especially if he wasn't going to take their relationship seriously and respect her enough to not take pictures with other girls and everything else that was going on. Emma's parents were obviously very relieved because they felt like this was the time that she was earnest about breaking up with him. At this point, they were hoping to get the old Emma back, but Riley did not handle the breakup well at all. Right after they broke up, he decided to attempt to commit suicide by drinking a bunch of alcohol, along with taking a bunch of Vicodin pills. Luckily, he failed. Needless to say, he was not taking things very well at this point. His friends and family were obviously concerned about him. Things kind of stepped up to a whole new level when November 18th rolled around. It was a Friday night, and Emma's high school had won a big football game, and one of her friends was having a little party at her house. Emma's parents decided she would be allowed to go, since it seemed like things had gotten a lot better, and it seemed like she wasn't talking to Riley anymore. While Emma was at the party, she all of a sudden started receiving these extremely sketchy texts. Around 11:30 p.m., these text messages said things like, "I've got someone you love. I'm going to harm them if you don't come outside." Obviously, she was very concerned, but she did think that there was a high possibility Riley's friends playing some type of prank on her. Shortly after this text message, she got another text that said, "It's a shame you can read all of this and still not value someone else's life." This is the point when Emma and her friend decided that they were going to go outside and check around to see if anything was going on outside. When they went outside, they saw someone that looked to be a man completely face down on the ground near the bushes by the end of the driveway of the girl's house. Then, they saw that it was Riley. At this moment, he started conveniently waking up and acting really confused, having no idea how he ended up there. He said someone had kidnapped him and had no idea where he was or how he ended up there, and that he was just holding his head like someone hit him or knocked him out. Emma was distraught, as to be expected. She was crying, and she had no idea what to think since they had just broken up. After he eventually got up, he called one of his friends to pick him up, and he told his friend that someone had knocked him out, put him in a car, and taken him to this house. His friend later expressed to the police that he didn't believe this at all. As most would, Emma just had a feeling something was odd about the whole situation, and she wished that Riley would simply leave her alone and let her move on with her life. The next day around 10:15 a.m., Emma was home and getting ready to meet her mom somewhere when she heard someone start banging on her front door. Obviously, this really freaked her out. Since she was home alone, she actually ended up texting Riley. The message said, "I hate you, but I need you." At this point, Riley decided to drive over to her house. On the flip side, when Emma didn't end up meeting her mom where she was supposed to, her mom drove back to their house, and this is when she ended up seeing Emma and Riley talking while just sitting on the driveway. Emma's mom went over there and told him that he had to leave, and he did. Sunday, the next day, Emma was still really worried and stressed out about the person hitting her door so hard and so fast. The weird text messages, Riley being kidnapped, and all of it were just very intense, but it seemed like she was kind of calming down on Sunday. Her parents ended up following her too. And from work. To make sure she was okay. Later that night, Emma and her dad went out to get some Sonic ice cream, and he noticed Emma was starting to act a little bit more like herself. She was definitely calming down after the weekend's events, and overall she seemed better. So that night, Emma got ready for bed like normal. Her dad said good night. And she went to sleep. However, in the middle of the night, her dad heard a really loud banging noise. It sounded as if someone was in the house had slammed a door really hard. He woke up and was startled when he heard the noise a second time. He ran to check on Emma and her brother. Upon opening Emma's bedroom door, he saw her just sleeping in her bed. Nothing seemed out of the usual. She just looked like she was lying there, completely asleep. Emma's dad just convinced himself that maybe he heard things. Everything seemed usual in their house, so he just went back to bed. The next morning, around 6 a.m., her parents got ready for the day. Nothing about their morning routine was out of the ordinary until her mom went into Emma's room to wake her up. And Emma was usually really easy to wake up, but this morning was different. Her mom thought it was extraordinary that she wasn't responding immediately when she first attempted to wake her up. She tried moving her legs, she called her name multiple times, and Emma still would not wake up. Her mom jokingly checked for a pulse, but then instantly realized something was wrong. That's when she looked at her face, and she felt that Emma did not have a pulse. Her mom, like any other parent, would frantically call 911. Paramedics got there fast, and they first believed it was some type of suicide, or overdose, or even that something had happened to her in her sleep with some unknown cause. When Emma didn't show up at school, rumors started spreading like wildfire that something had happened to her. Some rumors were stating that she had overdosed or committed suicide. This was very shocking to most. There was a candlelight vigil held for her, and there was a lot of public mourning. People were shocked that this happened to such a young girl, and they just wanted to know what exactly happened. Needless to say, detectives showed up at the crime scene, and at first, they thought it was some type of accident or unknown natural cause. However, they then noticed that there was a hole in the wall. Now, this hole was only as wide as a pen. Close to that hole, there was another. 2 bullets were shot into the corner that her bed was in. So detectives figured that whoever had shot a gun through the wall of the house clearly knew that that was Emma's bedroom, as well as where exactly her bed was. Because of all of this, detectives started trying to talk to her friends, asking if there was anyone out there who would want to harm Emma, or who had anything against her. Obviously, all of these people mentioned Riley's name at some point or another. So detectives went to Riley's dorm to talk with him. However, at this time, there was nothing that made police think he was a strong suspect. Riley's friends were actually really worried about him, because he had recently attempted suicide, and then the girl that he used to love was tragically murdered. However, there was a missing piece to all of this. While speaking to detectives, one of Riley's friends told them something that Riley had told them the Saturday before Emma was killed. Riley allegedly told his friend, Alex, that he had stolen his grandfather's gun as a way of protecting himself after he was kidnapped. His friends were really concerned about him having a gun on him, since he was suicidal at one point in his life. However, Riley reassured them that he wasn't suicidal, and he purely had the gun for his own protection. Since this fact was provided, Riley was considered a person of interest in Emma's death. The following morning, detectives started asking him about what he was up to the night that Emma was shot. He said he was at his friend Noah's house. When asked if he had slept over at Noah's house, he said, "I'm pretty sure I did." He was then asked if anyone had shown up to Noah's house, to which he answered, "No, I'm pretty it was just us." These answers were really strange, because of his hesitation, as well as the fact that he kept saying pretty sure. If he were there that night, which was only a week previous, he should have no trouble remembering that. Another bizarre thing was that he didn't mention Emma's name at all. Instead, the entire 2 hours he was being interviewed, he would continuously describe her as the girl. He seemed completely emotionless and detached during the interview. As the interview continued, Riley ended up telling them He kept trying to text Emma that weekend, but she wouldn't reply to him, and she eventually just blocked him. He then claimed that she had called him, but the only way she would see him is if he helped her with her paper. So Riley explained that he used one of his friend's phones to call her. He then says he was so upset that he left his dorm and drove to his grandparents' house, and he got there around 12:30 a.m. and only stayed for roughly 45 minutes before going back to his dorm. At this point, after that, he had a mental breakdown. Riley just sat in his car for the next several housing, looking at photos of the two of them together. Because of the tip that Noah gave them, detectives started asking him about his grandparents' guns. They asked where they were, how he had access to them, if he ever took one, and if he had a gun on him at all. Riley, of course, said no to pretty much everything he was asked and claimed not to have a gun at all. However, detectives had already talked to his peers, who claimed that he showed them the gun at his school campus. When detectives confronted Riley with this information, he basically denied it, and said he had no idea why his friends claimed that he showed them a gun. Clearly, Riley is looking really sketchy at this point, but he continued to deny that he had any possession of a gun. After this, his friend Noah claimed that Riley had asked him if he knew how to get fingerprints off of a gun. Noah obviously thought this was pretty strange and told them. So as soon as Riley left questioning, he immediately texted him and asked him why he snitched on him about having the gun, as well as the whole fingerprint thing. Noah explained, "Well, man, if you didn't do anything, you should have nothing to hide, and you shouldn't be worried about it," which is logical. Riley eventually told Alex that he got rid of the gun, and it was back in his grandparents' house. However, right after this, Riley's mom came into his room and started asking him about the gun and where it was, to which he said, "I don't have one. There is no gun." After these questionable things continued to happen, Alex and Noah started to feel like Riley probably did commit this crime. Finally, everything started to line up, especially since Riley actually asked his other friends to no longer speak to the police. Riley claimed that he did this because he needed to figure out what to do with the gun and how to get rid of it, since he didn't want to be blamed for something he wasn't guilty of. This was a pretty specific turning point in this case. Noah and Alex were pretty positive that Riley was the one who killed Emma, so they decided to secretly work with the police. After discussing the plan with the police, they decided that they would help him try to get rid of the gun. They knew that that was the one secure piece of evidence that they would need if they could get fingerprints, or at least connect Riley to the crime. It was a pretty clear situation. So the next day, Noah and Alex went over to Riley's house to play video games and chill as normally as possible. Little did Riley know, his friends were actually wearing mics, and they had a camera in a set of keys that were given to them by the police. Eventually, as planned, the conversation came up about Emma, and Riley started denying that he had any involvement again.
Like, with my life, because I mean, this is 70 years in jail if I get convicted of something I didn't do. Man, are you busy right now? Are you guys doing anything? Not really. What's not really?
Actually, we can order later, but
How much later?
I don't know right now.
Well, can we get a close? Because I need you to get gun.
The blood.
I'm gonna throw it in the water. They'll never find it.
I'm trying to get the water with like rocks and shit. I can't handle water.
Well, we can do all the normal ones.
Sure.
We can go on the smaller ledge that really looks out of the water. You know what I'm talking about?
Like under.
Yeah. And if I throw it with enough force, I know it's terrifying. I know this. You guys don't have to come with me if you don't want to.
I mean, I'm not too bad, man.
I just need
Jesus Christ, dude. I know that.
if it's in the Tennessee River, they will never find it. I know that much. And how I know it wasn't my grandfather's gun? His magazine had 5 shots in total when I first got it. Still has 5 shots in it. There's no.
I mean, if you had it all the time,
That's the thing.
something you lost it.
That's the thing. But if I actually gave them that gun, that's like, yeah, maybe it's 50-50. It may give them reason to say, okay, the fingerprints on this gun and this bullet don't match, cool. But at the same time, they could have never had fingerprints in the first place and be like, oh, and it's just this bullet, this
the lawsuit is stupid comment.
or this bullet fits in this magazine fits in this gun. Hey, if we shoot this ball, it does the same thing that the ballistic bullet. Yeah. So that's why I just want to eliminate that from the equation.
Upon all of them getting in the car, Riley drove to his stepdad's house, where he got the gun. He hopped back in the car, and the three of them went to grab some fast food, and the gun was in the back of the car, in a trash bag. Meanwhile, while all of this was happening, there were multiple undercover police cars following them. Noah and Alex were also texting the police officers in a group message, telling them what was going on. They finally reached a parking lot, where they were close enough to the river, and this was where they decided to get out and bring the gun down to the river. At this point, Riley was putting on gloves, and he very carefully started taking out the gun. Alex and Noah urgently texted the police to tell them it's a good time to come over to the car to catch Riley in the act. The police quickly showed up at the parking lot and immediately told them to get out of the car and put their hands up. Noah and Alex did this immediately, since they knew this would happen, and Riley cooperated. Police arrested him and took him into their custody. Afterward, Riley was convicted of first-degree murder, as well as 6 other felonies. While police were going through the trash bag that the gun was in, they also found much black clothing of Riley's from the night of Emma's murder. This made them believe that Riley was also the man that came and was hit repeatedly on her door. All strange happenings pointed directly to Riley. He obviously faked his own kidnapping. The situation as a whole, Riley was desperately in love with Emma. And though she did love him, however, she eventually stopped after his behavior with other girls on his campus, along with his controlling and possessive actions. This led to Riley's final snap. Fast forward to May of 2018, his trial. Shockingly, Riley's defense team decided to say that this crime was not actually a murder, but it was an accidental homicide. This kind of threw the court off, because they were surprised that his defense team was actually admitting that Riley was the one who shot the gun. They basically said that he was hoping that the gun would scare her, and she would call him, and he could come to her defense. The team said that he was basically setting the whole thing up with the same end goal as he attempted with his kidnapping plan, and banging on Emma's door. According to his defense, when Riley fired that shot in the backyard, he hoped that he could come to the rescue for Emma. They stated that anyone experienced with firearms might very well know that if you shoot into a house, it'll go through the wall. The defense said directly in the trail room, "Some of us may not know that, and I submit to you Riley Gall, who did not." After Riley's defense left the floor, the prosecution explained that there was no way that this was true, because of where the bullets were actually shot. Whoever shot this gun knew exactly where to shoot the bullets to contact her. This was not to get her attention, and they were clearly aimed at her. There were over 30 witnesses at the trial, and it took over a week to get through every piece of the case. On May 8 of 2018, William Riley Gall was found guilty of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to over 50 years in prison before he will get the chance for parole. His last words would not make any difference though.
I would like to sincerely apologize to the Walker family for causing nothing but pain and turmoil to their entire family. My words may carry little to no value to you, but I found it imperative to let you know the truth. That I'm sorry I took Emma away from you. That I robbed you of the experience of being able to watch your daughter grow up. Again, I'm sorry. I would also like to apologize to my family for the pain and embarrassment I put you through. I love you, and I hope that you can forgive me. I know that nothing I can do will ever bring Emma back or alleviate the pain that I caused. But what I can do is tell the truth of what happened that night. My intentions were not, and never have been, to cause Emma any physical harm. At times, I was a terrible boyfriend. I caused her emotional and psychological pain during the 2 years that we were together. But I never once even imagined to cause her any physical harm. My intentions that night were never to harm Emma, let alone take her life. I wanted to scare her, to frighten her so bad that she would have no choice but to talk to me again, to confide in me. I would be there to comfort her and to win her back. I loved Emma, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about her or what I did. I know that I can't be forgiven, and this will never be forgotten. But now that the truth is out, I pray that it's enough to show that I.
However, Emma's father's words were too much to bear.
Even enough words to express the grief and the hole in my heart. There will be no more family vacations with her, no new memories to cherish. I'll never see her graduate high school, go to college, get married, walk down the aisle to the real man she'd have chosen, to have children and a family of her own, to tell my grandchildren stories of their mom as a child. I'll never hear her voice again.